Putin, 8. november 24.
Ukraine's attack on Russia's border region embarrasses Putin. How will it affect the war? The quick entry of Ukrainian soldiers into the Kursk area of Russia was the largest such cross-border raid carried out by Kiev's forces throughout the nearly 2.5 years of the war. This raid exposed Russia's weaknesses and dealt a heartbreaking blow to the Kremlin. Thousands of residents have been forced to evacuate the region as a result of the unexpected invasion, which has caused the Russian military to battle to stave off the assault. The cross-border incursion provides Ukraine with a much-needed boost to public morale at a time when the country's undermanned and undergunned soldiers have been facing persistent Russian attacks along the front line that extends for more than 1,000 kilometers, 620 miles. A brief examination of the Ukrainian raid and the consequences it has. When did the attack by the Ukrainians take place? Early on Tuesday morning, forces from Kiev surged into the Kursk region from a variety of places. They easily overpowered a few checkpoints and field fortifications that were held by poorly armed border guards and army units along the territory's border with Ukraine, which is 245 kilometers, 152 miles long. It is stated that units from multiple battle-hardened Ukrainian army brigades participated in the foray into the Kursk region. This is in contrast to earlier attacks that were carried out by small groups of Russian volunteers fighting with Ukrainian soldiers. It was alleged by Russian military bloggers that Ukrainian mobile formations consisting of multiple armored vehicles each quickly drove dozens of kilometers, miles, into Russian territory. This allowed them to circumvent Russian barriers and spread terror throughout the region. It has been reported by the Institute for the Study of War, a think tank based in Washington, that Ukrainian forces had been successful in penetrating the region from a distance of up to 35 kilometers, 20 miles. Ukrainian forces appear to be able to use these small armored groups to conduct assaults past the engagement line due to the low density of Russian personnel in the border areas, which was stated in an analysis of the operation. This is due to the fact that the engagement line is relatively low. An extensive use of drones has been made by Ukrainian troops in order to attack Russian military vehicles. Additionally, electronic warfare assets have been deployed in order to suppress Russian drones and disrupt military communications. Additional Ukrainian troops are said to have begun digging in around the town of Sudza, which is approximately 10 kilometers, 6 miles, from the border, as well as in some other places. This is in contrast to the fact that tiny Ukrainian mobile squads roamed the region without attempting to consolidate authority. What kind of a response has the Russian military given? Due to the fact that they were caught off guard, Russian troops were unable to launch a prompt reaction to the assault. Due to the fact that the majority of the Russian army was involved in the offensive in the eastern Donetsk region of Ukraine, there were only a few troops left to protect the Kursk border region. The Russian battalions that were stationed along the frontier were primarily comprised of conscript soldiers who had inadequate training, and they were quickly defeated by professional Ukrainian units. A few of the conscripts were taken captive. Due to a lack of available personnel, the Russian military command originally relied on bombers and helicopter gunships in an effort to halt the onslaught that was being launched by the Ukrainian military. According to Russian military bloggers, the Ukrainian forces that were advancing caused damage to at least one Russian helicopter and damaged another one. At least one Russian helicopter was destroyed. Later, Russian reinforcements began to arrive in the Kursk region. These reinforcements included elite special forces units and hardened veterans of the Wagner military contractor. However, up to this point, they have not been successful in dislodging Ukrainian forces from Sudza and other areas close to the border. There were casualties among some of the newly arrived troops since they lacked the necessary combat expertise. In one instance, a convoy of military trucks halted negligently on the roadside close to the region of conflict, and they were subsequently bombarded by fire by the Ukrainian military. On Friday, the Russian Ministry of Defense announced that Ukraine had suffered a total of 945 casualties as a result of the 4 days of conflict. Attempts to independently verify the claim were unsuccessful. In terms of Russian casualties, the government could not provide any information. Regarding the incursion, what statements did the Ukrainian government make? There has been no reaction from Ukrainian officials regarding the raid that occurred over the border. Late on Thursday night, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky delivered a video address to the nation. In the presentation, he avoided directly mentioning the violence that was taking place in the Kursk region. On the other hand, he stated that Russia brought the war to our land, and it ought to feel what it has done. Mikhailo Podolyak, an advisor to Zelensky, stated on Thursday that strikes that breach the border will compel Russia to start to realize that the war is slowly creeping inside of Russian territory. Additionally, he argued that such an operation would strengthen Kiev's position in any future negotiations with Moscow or other major powers. How soon will it be possible to carry out a negotiation process in such a way that we will be able to exert pressure on them or force them to give us something? He stated that this would only occur when the conflict was not proceeding in accordance with their forecasts. What was the reply from the Kremlin? The assault has been termed as a large-scale provocation by Russian President Vladimir Putin, who also stated that it involved indiscriminate shelling of civilian buildings, residential houses, and ambulances. According to the Russian authorities, the attack that the Ukrainian military launched on the Kursk region resulted in the deaths of at least 5 civilians, including 2 people who worked in ambulances, and the injuries of approximately 70 others. Dmitry Medvedev, the deputy president of the Security Council, which is led by Vladimir Putin, stated that the Ukrainian incursion highlighted the necessity for Moscow to broaden its war objectives to include the capture of further territory in Ukraine. This additional territory would include the capital city of Kiev, the port of Odessa on the Black Sea, and other key cities. Following the declaration of a federal emergency in the Kursk region by Russia, local authorities have been granted additional powers to facilitate the rapid coordination of emergency response efforts. While playing down the military's lack of readiness for the strike, Russian official propaganda centered its attention on the Kremlin's efforts to provide help to citizens who had been displaced. What are Ukraine's objectives, and what are the potential outcomes of the situation? In the eastern Donetsk region, where Russian forces have pressed offensives in multiple sectors and made slow but steady gains, depending on their advantage in firepower, Kiev may have launched the operation with the intention of compelling the Kremlin to retir.